the first thing a financial advisor does, it's all about helping somebody create a financial plan, right? How do you do that? A good financial planner would do for a client would be first and foremost, just sit down with somebody and get to know, right? Personally, professionally, business-wise, do a lot of listening. Where are you? What all planning have you done? And then really talk about what are that person's goals and objectives? What do they want to see happen? Then we can understand where somebody is and where they're trying to get to. And then we try to create a plan to show them what that would look like, right?
Yes, sir. Welcome back to another episode of the Southern Executive Experience. I'm here with Richard Geriner from Northwestern Mutual out of Savannah, Georgia. Thank you, Richard, for coming down and meeting with me today.
My pleasure, Jamie. I'm excited to be here and thank the world of you and your family, and good to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You want to start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I am, I guess I'm born and raised in Savannah, went to school there, went to University of Georgia, Go Dogs. I got, my wife and I are both Georgia alumni.
Awesome.
3 sons, Tripp is 26, Carter is 24. They both went to Georgia, both work up in Atlanta. Tripp's in real estate business up there with CBRE, and Carter, my middle one, is actually with our firm, our team with Northwestern Mutual up in Atlanta. And then Holden, my youngest son, went to Auburn. He actually played football over there, graduated in 3 years, and he is 21. He's out in Texas now playing for Texas State.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm an Auburn fan. I grew up an Auburn fan.
Oh, okay. I can say War Eagle.
There you go. There you go. I was saying, and I actually walked on at Ole Miss for a little bit, and
really,
I was on the team for just a little bit.
Nice.
So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So, I guess you said that your son also is a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. I saw that you are a second generation financial advisor yourself.
Correct. So I guess somewhat similar to you in business. So yeah, my dad was with Northwestern for 57 years. Believe it or not, he worked in banking for a couple of years and then left and came in our industry. He passed away, I guess it's been about 3 years now.
Oh, man.
And then, anyway, and then I graduated Georgia, knew I wanted to come in this business.
Right.
And anyway, I interviewed, looked around. I didn't want to come back to Savannah right off the bat and, right out of college. So I ended up joining Northwestern up in Atlanta.
Okay.
Stayed and worked up there for about 3 years. And I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience. Thank the Lord, it's like the light went off one day and it's like, all right, you're either staying up here the rest of your life or moving back. So I moved back to Savannah and, such a great lifestyle we have down here and all that. And yes, I've been doing it for literally right at 35 years now. And like I say, Carter, my middle son, he's third generation. He started about 2 years ago.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. I always like to say I'm fourth generation copier or office equipment salesman. Uh-huh. My grandfather did Royal typewriters back in the day and things like that. And then my uncles both were in the business and my father kind of grew from them. So
nice.
I always say I got toner in my blood.
That's cool. A lot of history.
That's right. Well, just for somebody that doesn't know, what does a financial advisor do?
Sure. It's a great question. So, and of course I could talk for a long time about that. So, I would say the first thing a financial advisor does is obviously, they're meeting, helping people, right? And, obviously you want to have an impact and you want to help people. And really, I think at the end of the day, it's all about helping somebody create a financial plan, right? And of course, how do you do that? I think unfortunately, a lot of people in our industry, they literally just meet with somebody for the first time and say, you ought to do this, insurance or investments or whatever it is. What we try to do, and I think a really a good financial planner would do for a client would be first and foremost, just sit down with somebody and get to know them, right? Personally, professionally, business-wise, and do a lot of listening, right? Just where are you? What all planning have you done? And then really talk about, as you know, from business to each business, everybody's got a different situation.
Right.
What are that person's goals and objectives? What do they want to see happen? And then once we spend a lot of time, what we call fact-finding or discovery, then we can understand where somebody is and where they're trying to get to. And then we try to create a plan to show them what that would look like. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what are some of the tools that you build that plan? What does that plan consist of?
Yeah, absolutely, James. So in our philosophy, if you kind of picture a triangle, at the base of that triangle, I think where we're maybe a little unique is we're always your football guy, and two, defense wins championships.
That's
right.
That's right.
Everybody loves the pass game and the offense, which is awesome, but the defensive side in our world of financial planning is kind of the risk management. And in our world, we just think it's super important to protect first, if something bad was to happen. And what I mean by that is, okay, what if you die, right? What do you want to do for your family from a legacy standpoint, from a life insurance planning standpoint? People you take for granted maybe your ability to work every day. Well, what if you get sick or hurt and you can't work? Making sure we've got a plan that there's enough income coming in.
Yes, sir.
Of course, medical coverage, when you maybe get a little bit older, it might be long-term health care. So at the base of that triangle or planning pyramid would be the risk management, making sure we protect first.
Right.
That would also involve making sure you've got the right wills and estate planning and all that. Once we have that taken care of, then we kind of move up the ladder of the triangle. Then we like to kid around with people. Hey, hopefully you're going to be here for a while. And let's talk about what are your goals financially? Saving for a house, buying a business, maybe educating your children, retirement. What does that look like long term? And what do you want that to look like? And then we start building out, the financial plans, the investment portfolio. Maybe it's the retirement accounts, might be 529 plans for children's college savings. Those would be the next tools that we'd be building out.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about one of the tools you talked about, and that's, I believe, like preparing for the worst, life insurance. I think you kind of mentioned that. What is your thoughts on, I kind of know this a little bit, but what are your thoughts on whole compared to term life?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, our thinking is, they both have pros and cons, right? And a lot of it, of course, depends on somebody's situation. I think before you even get into the type of coverage, Jamie, whether you do term or whole life, permanent, variable life, universal life, whatever you want to call it, to us, the most important thing to maybe think about first is get the right amount of coverage.
Yes, sir.
Like forget term, forget whole life. How much coverage do you need? And just maybe to spend a minute on that.
Yeah.
How do you come up with that? So many people out there, they'll just go buy $500,000 of life insurance or $1 million or $2 million, whatever the number is, just because it seems right.
Right.
What we try to do with people is really sit down and think about, what is the right amount of coverage for you? And how do you do that? I think there's a few things, but typically you're going to look at, okay, if something was to happen to you, what do you want to do for your family?
Right.
Number one, do you have any debt, mortgages, notes, loans, etc.? Okay, if something was to happen to you, do you want to have those paid off?
Right.
Okay, how much does it take to do that? Number two, if maybe you're the main breadwinner, and if something happens to you, how much income do you want your family to have coming in if you're not here?
Right.
And we literally, I like to tell people all the time, math is math.
Right.
Numbers don't lie, right? If somebody says, well, hey, if I'm not here, I want to make sure my family has $50,000 a year of income coming in, 100, 200, whatever that number is. Literally, it can be calculated. Well, in order to do that, you need X amount of coverage, right? So paying the debts off, income replacement, if you have children, you want to make sure they're educated. More sophisticated cases, business owners, it might be key person protection. Higher net worth people, it may be for estate taxes or liquidity. But point is, come up with the right amount of coverage first. Then to get into your question about, okay, well, what's best? Is it term? Is it whole life? I think then it first and foremost, it's going to be determined by cash flow, right? If you have got a limited budget and you need a lot of insurance, get term, because that's probably all you're going to be able to afford either anyway.
Yeah.
And then how long are you going to want to have the coverage for? If it's a temporary need to cover, maybe a mortgage or something for 10 years, 15 years, term is the answer.
Yes, sir.
But I always ask people all the time, like, how long do you want to be covered for? Term is great in that it's very economical and it covers you if something was to happen, and you can get a lot of coverage. The negative with term, at the end of the day, it's kind of like renting. You're going to pay a premium, and if you outlive that 10-year or that 20-year time frame, a lot of people don't realize they call term for a reason. It's only going to cover you for that time frame. So if you live past that time, you've put in all that money, it's gone. You have nothing to show for it. Permanent or whole life, the negative, you're going to put a lot more money in it, but it's a level premium. And the main difference, it's going to cover you forever. No matter how long you live, it's always there.
That's right.
Is it going to be the best investment you have? No, it shouldn't. Can it be a good place to build some money up? Yes. I mean, like Northwestern, our primary company, we write all the companies, but this year we're crediting a dividend interest rate of 5.5%.
Okay.
Can you do better than that in the market or business or real estate? I would hope so. But, for long-term safe money, it's not a bad return.
Not at all.
It does grow with no taxes. The money's accessible and liquid. And there are ways to potentially access that cash on a tax-free basis as well. So, long answer, I know, but they both have pros and cons. And frankly, a lot of times it might even make sense. Do you have some of both, as well?
That's right. Well, and that's I know this may be a basic thing, but it's all life insurance is tax-free, right? When it's paid out.
Great question. So yes, the death benefit is tax-free when you die.
That's right.
The cash values grow tax deferred, so you don't pay any taxes as the money is accumulating inside, like a permanent whole life policy.
Right.
And there are ways to access the cash value on a potential tax-free basis if you ever want to use that money.
And at the end of the whole life, I guess the whole life, either not when you pass away, but if you wanted to take it out at an older age, once you take that money out, the insurance is voided, right?
It's a great question. So there are a lot of different ways to access the cash value in the policy.
Right.
Certainly you can just cash it in. Now, if you cash it in, to your point, the death benefit's going. You get your money, but the policy's done for.
Gotcha.
The other thing, obviously, if you cash it in, you do owe ordinary income taxes on the gain that you've had in the policy. But you certainly can cash it in. You can partially cash it in, as long as you don't surrender it for more than what you've paid into it. That's not considered taxable because you're just recovering your cost basis. And then the other thing a lot of people, may or may not know about is the policies have what we call a loan provision, where basically you can typically borrow up to 90% of the cash value. And if you do it as a loan, that's not considered taxable, right? There is interest on the loan, so you've got to weigh that out. But the other advantage of doing the loan, to your point, let's say you've got $1 million face amount policy and you pull out $100,000 as a loan.
Yeah.
If you've never repaid that loan, when you do die, the death benefit's still payable, but it's reduced by the amount of the loan.
It pays off the loan first.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
I was real curious about that part. Well, I know just a little bit. We mentioned off mic. We've talked about Dave Ramsey before, and he's just totally against that whole life. And I understand why, but I think it's in certain situations. Usually, who he's speaking to is people that are struggling coming up. That's his prime audience, and that's kind of what that kind of sounds like to me. There's benefits to both for sure.
100%. Yeah, and Dave Ramsey, I mean, frankly, he's got some great financial planning advice.
Absolutely.
I mean, Christian base, which me being a Christian, I really appreciate. And I think he's got some, some great planning advice out there. I will say, I think a lot of his audience probably is more of, kind of the blue collar type people, and he, they all need help. Typically somebody doing permanent or whole life, I mean, you need to be having all your credit card debts paid off, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to be doing whole life. You got a 20% credit card rate, right?
That's right.
Or if you're not maxing out your retirement contributions, if you're not already maxing out an IRA or a Roth IRA or maybe a 401k through work, we would typically say, and Dave Ramsey would say too, those people need to be doing term.
That's right. That's right.
Now, but for maybe an executive, a business owner, a physician, or what have you, higher income, they're maxed out on all their retirement accounts. They're looking for other tax strategies. They need a lot of life insurance. They really want permanent. The permanent or whole life can be a good place for them too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's switch a little bit to more investments.
Sure.
And something that happened to me when I was first getting started in work, you don't have a lot of money, and I knew I wanted to invest, and I went to a handful of financial advisors. At that time, I was living in the Valdosta area. I was opening up that territory, and I just remember nobody would really talk to me. I was 22, 23 years old. And I would tell them, I got $500 a month. I got this. I got something I could put away, and I'd like to talk. And it was just I couldn't get anybody to help me, and I guess I got distracted, and I didn't do as good as I should have on that. So I probably should have pushed a little harder. But I say that to say is, what is the starter strategy for somebody starting out investing? I'm not saying this. They're at the point in their life where they're ready to start putting some money away. What's a good starter strategy?
Great question. And sorry you had that, kind of that experience.
That's okay.
A lot of people in the financial world, it's really interesting. Not that we're the best. I mean, everybody's got their, pros and cons, but a lot of these financial advisors, it's really interesting. They have minimums. It's like, okay, well, if you don't have $1 million, sorry, you don't meet our minimums. We're not going to talk to you.
That's right.
Our philosophy is that we don't have minimums, right? We just want to work with good people and help people. And I mean, I remember starting out in business, and Jamie, you're a great example of this too. I remember meeting with a lot of young, resident physicians or a lot of young people in business that did they have a lot of money at the time? No, they didn't, but we could help them, create a financial plan for them. And guess what? Today, a lot of those same people, they're some of our biggest clients because we were willing to take the time and help them. And, of course, we've got a team. We've got younger people on our team. My son, for example, deals with a lot of younger people. So, but no matter how young you are or no matter how much money you have, get started early. You probably heard it. Compounded interest is the eighth wonder of the world.
Yep.
I mean, when you start early, even if you can only put away $50 a month, $100 a month, $500 a month, by starting early and just getting in the habit of paying yourself first and letting that money compound, you're going to have so much more later.
Right. Oh yeah.
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 So
any particular kind of investment? Do more mutual funds, individual stocks? What would you recommend?
Great question. So, when you're younger, I think it's always important. We usually tell any of our clients, ideally, if at all possible, you want to try to get 3 to 6 months savings just built up in an emergency fund.
That's right.
That probably like a money market or something. You're probably not going to earn a lot of return on that.
Right.
But it's just good business to have ideally 3 months of your income put away in savings, right? So I think once you do that, then it really becomes, okay, well, where can you be putting that other money away? I would always tell everybody, if you're able to do a Roth IRA, do a Roth, and if you're all able to, max it out. I think the limit's close to about $7,000 a year now.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking a little under $600 a month. The advantage of the Roth is when you put that money in there, it's going to grow tax-free. And then, we don't know what's going to happen with taxes long term, but more than likely they may possibly go up. Well, the beauty of the Roth, when you do eventually pull that money out, you can pull it out all out tax-free. So I would typically say if you're able to do a Roth, do a Roth. if you work with an employer and they offer a 401k or a retirement plan through the business, max it out. A lot of these companies, the business owner will even match what you contribute.
Right.
So I would say if you're able to do a Roth, do a Roth. By all means, get started with your company retirement plan if you're able. And then, just setting up your own personal investment account. When you're younger, time's on your side. I mean, you go back to the 1920s, the S&P 500 is a lot of ups and downs, but it's averaged 10%.
Right.
So even if you just set up a good mutual fund or investment account, you probably can be at least 80% equities when you're younger if it's long-term money. And don't worry about the market going up and down. The market's always going to go up and down, but just consistently put that money in there.
And like compounded interest, and it'll grow over time. Start young.
Absolutely.
And that was the thing, like you just said. I feel like if at that time, 22, 23-year-old Jamie that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get with somebody that would have just kind of put the right direction. Let me start putting a little bit away. Maybe not a couple hundred a month. It
Sure.
Really, whatever I could have done. I think that would have been great. But what has changed is the most between what I know you grew up in the business. Your father was in the business. What's changed the most from when you started to now?
That's a great question. A lot has changed, no doubt, but at the same time, I would say a lot of things are still the same too, right? I think in our particular situation, what's changed a lot, like years ago, we used to focus on just insurance planning,
Yes,
right? And I think there were other advisors that probably focused on just investments, right?
Right.
I think probably one of the biggest changes now, everything that we do, and we think it's the right way to do it, it should be built on a plan. Like we really feel like even that younger years ago, a 23-year-old, 24, everybody deserves to have their own personal financial plan.
Yeah.
And that's going to evolve. That's going to change over time. I think years ago, it was more product based. And of course, on the investment side, years ago, it was all commission based, right? A lot of buying and selling of stocks. For the most part, I know in our world and a lot of the financial planning world, it's now more we're acting as a fiduciary. So we're not typically charging a commission to buy and sell stocks. Okay. We're managing the money based on a plan. And, a real simple rule of thumb, most advisors, you've probably heard of it, they're typically going to charge like a 1% advisory fee to manage the money. Years ago, that wasn't even out there. Stockbrokers, they were called. They were buying and selling stocks and getting paid commissions. Now, I would say a lot of the business, it's based on having a financial plan, and then it's more of acting as a fiduciary where you're managing that money for the client. Typically, depending on the amount, it's about 1% a year. But I like it. That's how my own personal money is managed because I think it puts the advisor on your side of the table. If they're not, they have a vested interest in growing that money because they're going to make more. But frankly, if they're not growing it, you're not going to stay with them.
That's right.
So,
and it's not more of a transactional relationship. It's more of more of a partner or a consultant.
Absolutely.
Relationship.
Absolutely. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So what is a couple more topics here. What is a financial move that you would recommend a business owner make in rural Georgia, a small business owner? What's some of the advice you would give to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we're business owners as well. So I think, a few things I would mention, obviously having your own personal financial plan in order, right? Typically, most business owners we work with, if you said, what's your best asset? It's their business, right? And maybe it might involve even owning some real estate. And that is typically going to be that business owner's best investment. It should be. That's what you know. It's what you've built up through the years, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, diversity, right? It probably does make sense. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. Do some things outside of the business, right? So for a business owner, there's a few things we always talk about, kind of getting back to the financial plan. First and foremost, make sure you've got a succession plan. Like, right. And what I mean by that, for that owner, what is your eventual exit strategy with the business? God forbid if something happens to you, what do you want to see happen to your business, right? Or, when you do eventually maybe retire and step out, who do you want that business to go to? So, and of course, a lot of that is working with the attorney, with the accountant, all the advisors together.
Yeah.
Have a succession plan so you know what is going to happen with that business long term.
Okay.
I would say that being foremost. And then again, once you get that done, do you offer benefits for your employees, whether it's medical, dental, vision, disability, life? Do you offer a retirement plan in the business, what we call a qualified plan, like maybe a 401k, a simple, or a SEP? Great benefit for the owner, but also for the employees to be able to participate in. And then the other thing we do a lot of work with, again, a lot of these businesses, what is the business's best asset? Typically, the business's best asset are the people, right?
Absolutely.
You beat me to it. You know it.
Yeah.
And so, you want to be doing everything you can to reward those people, but also what can you be doing to retain them, right? Now, like a family business, there's probably going to be a certain amount of people that own the business or will eventually own it.
Right.
But there may be a lot of key people that they may not ever have ownership interest, but can you do anything to reward and retain those people? So we do a lot of work with these non-qualified deferred compensation, salary continuation plans that it's a pretty good tool to go help you reward those key people. And if they don't stay with you, they don't get it. So it can be a really good tool to help you retain them. They're going to think twice about doing something else if they know if they stay with you, I get this on the back end.
This extra incentive package if I retire here.
Correct.
I like that. I
Yep.
like that. All right. We got a couple quick lightning round questions here.
Sure.
So just one or the other. What do you recommend? A Roth or a traditional IRA?
Roth.
Roth. All right. Real estate or stocks?
That's a tough one. You're going to think I'm crazy. I would say both. I'd say both, but real estate can be a great investment.
All right. One financial book that you think everyone should read?
Great question.
I should have hit you with these before. I apologize.
All good. Well, I would always say the Bible first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And Proverbs, there's some great wisdom in there. But then, gosh, there's so many, Think and Grow Rich. I could go on and on. Yeah.
What's a money habit that you swear by personally?
Pay yourself first.
Pay yourself first. And last, best piece of financial advice you've ever received?
I would almost say pay yourself first. Start early and let compounded interest work for you.
I like it. Well, Richard, let me see if anything else here. Nope. Richard, where can people find you if they want to connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're based out of Savannah. It's Richard Geriner, Geriner. We're with Northwestern Mutual. We have our own firm, but that's the main company we represent. But we're happy to help people. We've got a team. We've actually got an office here in St. Simons with my business partners, Josh Ferguson and Kirk Farkas. I think we've got a team of we're up to about 14 people total now. Awesome. And that's important. One person cannot do this business alone. I couldn't do what I do without our team and our back office, administrative staff. So, we just enjoy helping people.
Awesome. Any last words or advice for my viewers? No,
this is a great thing that you're doing, Jamie. I think it's awesome, a way to learn and as long as I've been doing this, I think it's important in any business. You're always learning. You're always growing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming by, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. That's all it is.
That's it.
Yes,
okay.
sir.